Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this evening's town hall hosted by our board member, Anna Hill, representing District 1. Without further remarks, I'm going to transition the program over to board member Hill so that she can give welcoming remarks, and then we can move through this evening's program. Thank you so much. As a reminder, I'm so sorry. As a reminder, please feel free to drop any of your questions in the chat box that is right there on your computer screen. Ms. Hill has collected some questions in advance. However, we would definitely love to be able to get to as many questions as we can this evening. Mrs. Hill?
Thank you. I appreciate the warm welcome, and I'd like to welcome everybody who's here on this call, both in the Zoom itself and then listening remotely. We are doing a 2.0 of the last call when weather interrupted what we were trying to do. So thank everyone for your patience. As you know, yesterday was a board meeting, and this was the first possible day that we could get this rescheduled. And thank you to the team who is here in your, at 6 o'clock at night now. For those watching this and recording, I appreciate everyone making the extra effort. This is really important. One thing I wanted to clarify off the bat, sometimes there's a little confusion between Region 1 and District 1. I'm the board member for District 1, but that doesn't mean I don't care about all districts. I do. My goal is to ensure student success. So this is open to everyone, not even just to people who have students in the system, but to taxpayers also. So welcome to everyone. Thank you guys again for doing the town hall reschedule. I'm going to pass the baton to Ms. Watson Harris, and then we'll get busy with the questions.
Thank you so much, Board Member Hill, and thank you. The first voice you heard, because I don't think she introduced herself, that was Miss Melissa Harris. She is our Deputy Superintendent of Community Empowerment, Innovation, and Partnerships, and we welcome her, and we thank both Miss Harris and her entire team from the Family Impact Hub, as well as our community engagement team, for being here and being the engine behind making this possible. We thank Mrs. Hill for, first and foremost, her service on the Board of Education and making sure that she holds us to task and that we create opportunities like this to get information out to our stakeholder group. It's been a great start to the school year, even with all of the bumps and bruises. We got many of our children back into the school space, and I had the pleasure and the privilege last week of visiting so many schools and enjoyed closing out my week at Dunwoody High School with our new principal, Principal Bass. So that was a great highlight of last week. I do just want to acknowledge that you have almost the entire cabinet on the call, because we believe that teamwork makes the dream work. So you not only have all of our chiefs and deputies, and not only Ms. Pearch, who happens to be our regional superintendent serving most of Mrs. Hill's district, but you have the majority of the other regional superintendents on the call as well, because we work as a unit, and the issues, compliments, concerns that are brought up this evening are things that we will take back as a cabinet team, because we're always striving for continuous improvement. So I thank you so much for that. In addition to the other cabinet members that are on the call, I do just want to lift up that Richard Boyd is here with us this evening. He is our interim Chief Operating Officer. He stepped up where he was needed in the organization at this time. And so I just want to acknowledge that he is here. He is committed to the work at hand, but he is our interim Chief Operating Officer, and we are happy that he's here this evening, and we'll work to support him in answering any questions as well. So again, I'm just delighted to be here. I'm sorry that our first go round got canceled or we had to postpone it, but this won't be the only opportunity. And as I've shared before, if you invite us, we will come. So we will continue to plan formal opportunities like this. But if you want any member of the team to come out to a community meeting or gathering, we are always ready to take the show on the road. So thank you again for being in community with us this evening. We know it's dinner time, but we will look forward to being in conversation with all of you. And thank you again, Mrs. Hill, for hosting this event and giving us the opportunity to engage with our various stakeholders. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Mrs. Pierce, who is the Region 1 superintendent, could you explain to me, first of all, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, and then could you explain a little bit about why your role is so crucial? And what I'm getting at is the questions I receive sometimes are from parents who just don't know where to go for answers. And you're a wealth of knowledge. Could you kind of tell us what your role is, and then just help people if they simply don't know where to go, maybe give them a little outline of a roadmap?
Of course. So good evening, everyone. I appreciate you putting me on the spot right away, Miss Hill.
Happy to.
But yes, I think I probably know many of you, or at least have emailed with many of you. But I am Melanie Pierce, the Region Superintendent for Region 1, which is the Chamblee, Dunwoody, and Cross Keys cluster schools, and then a few specialty schools. But basically, and we talk about this a lot as regionals, we're the go-between between the district and the communities in our region. And I know in a lot of my communication with the parents in the community, I'm always sharing, oh, come to us. I think a lot of people might contact you, Ms. Hill, with more operational stuff. And so we highly encourage that you go to the principal or to me. And then if you can't get something resolved, then you can move up. But I know I've mentioned in a lot of communication with you, the most efficient way to get responses would be going straight to the school or to me or my team. I have great coordinators and a great micro cabinet. But basically, because we have all the divisional information, I guess, for lack of a better word, where we can respond to those things and any concerns or questions or move suggestions forward. And I know we've received a lot of suggestions, recommendations lately that I'm able to share as I meet with the different divisions. So I hope that kind of answers that.
It does. Thank you. And part of the reason I wanted to ask that was because you're right. I do get a lot of operational questions, and I certainly don't mind. But just to kind of outline, the board is responsible for policy, and the superintendent is responsible for operations. So I get a lot of questions. One today was a really good one from a grandparent who said, my grandchild is struggling with this type of mask. What type of masks are allowed? Is it consistent? All of that. That's a great thing for me to know that people want to understand, but that's an operations question. And so I forward that to, in this case, I forwarded that to you, Ms. Watson-Harris, so that they could answer the question and provide some insight. And I say that so that what people understand is it's not me deflecting. This is where I'm trying to make sure people get to the person who has the answer to the question. A lot of times I'll get a message, oh, something happened in my student's classroom. What can I do? And I always encourage parents, have you spoken with the teacher? Have you spoken with the vice principal, the principal? Because a lot of times when you get closer to what the problem is or what the challenge is or what the question is, it gets answered so much more efficiently. So I'm just sharing that to let people know I always want to know what goes on, because it helps me when I'm considering voting in board matters with policy related issues. But when it comes down to specifics about operations, that's why I forward emails, and I, include myself and always follow up if you don't get the answer that you need in the proper amount of time. But also thank everyone in advance for their patience. This is a really busy time of year. And it's also a stressful time of year with everything we have going on with COVID and the mask policies, and, just getting back to school anyways is a stressful time. So with that, I appreciate you sort of setting the stage to explain to people how they can get questions answered. And I want to jump right in now to questions that we have. And as a reminder, we've got 3 things that we definitely want to cover: the comprehensive master plan, the Dunwoody Chamblee Elementary School, and then enrollment/comparability. So Ms. Watson Harris, do you have a preference of, these kind of overlap? Do you have a preference of what you want to jump into first?
You can start anywhere. And
Okay.
I think what I would like all of our friends and family to know is that it won't just be me responding to the questions. That's why we have the incredible leadership team on hand. Thank you.
Well, with that, then let's just start with the comprehensive master plan. I think that's sort of the big picture issue, and then the others are kind of underneath of that. So one question I get very often, and we have all seen this, what's going on with the comprehensive master plan? What can we expect? What is the timing? So I'm going to just step back and listen now if someone wants to jump in and give some details about the comprehensive master plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hill. I'll start, and then I'm going to ask Ms. Harris to jump in, as well as Mr. Boyd if he has anything additional to share. Yes, we, had some pauses with the comprehensive master plan. We all know that there were some concerns with the validity of the building assessments. That was our first kind of cause to just pause and make sure that the information that we were getting out was accurate, and that we really knew the current state of all of our buildings so that we could be most informed in terms of where we would be going next. We also know that we had some transition in leadership in our operations division. But we are getting back on track. I hope that everyone saw that we had updated the plan on the website. That was done I believe it was June or July. Ms. Harris is going to give the exact date. And we have our town halls coming up. That's exactly the part of the process we were in when we had to take a momentary pause, that we have the results from the community engagement. We have many, many documents from all of the town halls and other levels of engagement that were held. And our next round of town halls is where we're going to come back to the community to share what was gathered during those town halls and begin to make recommendations of one, how we're prioritizing projects in the district, as well as what our vision is moving forward. And again, this is not a polished process. This is just the next level of community engagement to share what we've learned thus far, and the recommendations that we're making. Ms. Harris or Mr. Boyd, would you like to add additional details?
Yes, Superintendent. So you definitely covered all bases. However, a couple more details. One, our CMP Region 1 Town Hall will be on August 31st at 6 p.m. What we expect to do in that town hall is give an update on the timeline, tell you what has taken place since our last grouping of town halls. Additionally, we want to provide updates on SPLOST 5 because we recognize that many questions have come from all over the district around updates on those projects. Where are we at now and where are we headed? At the end of September, the beginning of October, we will do another set of meetings where we will then provide more details on our priorities, the recommendations that we've received for all of you, and the vision for moving forward. We really want to take more of your feedback at this next meeting on August 31st. So I encourage you to be sure to send your questions and your thoughts in advance, and you'll also have an opportunity to do so at the meeting on the 31st.
Thank you. So just to go back a little bit, one of the things that Ms. Watson Harris mentioned was questions and concerns about reporting. So I just want to take a minute to make sure people are aware of what reporting is available. So if you go to the Comprehensive Master Plan section of the DeKalb County School District website, there's a section called Assessment Data. And it's actually pretty interesting. There are 4 different types of reports. One is the FCA, which is Facility Condition Assessment. And the schools are all given, each school has one, a number 1 from 100. Then there's the ESA, which is the Educational Suitability Assessment. And you can read in the very first page what the report is for, but it's what it sounds like. How suitable is the facility for educating, which is different than what is the condition of the facility. Then there's another one that's capacity, and it just says this is what the capacity is for the school. And then there's a forecast, and the forecast is a demographic forecast. So if you're curious to know what's going on right now with your school, I encourage you to take a look. Maybe look at some in your area where your students attend, or if you're a taxpayer, the ones that you know and love in your community. And I encourage you to look at all of those. And then the other thing you can do on the website, if you look in the current status, each month there is a status report. The one for June has been posted. I'm sure July is coming soon, but those are a nice way to see what's going on. And then there's a timeline and status tracker, so you know what to expect next. And one of the pieces of feedback.
No, that is not good. That's not a very sticky one, Nana. We need to, I think you should, even the material is not, even if you take it,
Sometimes that happens. Yes, if we can
Okay.
just go on mute.
One of the pieces of feedback I've received from the community is not really knowing what to expect when. So just to sort of reiterate, in August, there are town halls. Region 1 is August 31st, but again, anyone is welcome to join any town hall they want to. This is an entire, district, but each region and each individual 1 through 7 district have sort of unique personalities and needs, and there's some that are the same and some that are different. And then will you tell us again what to expect next after we have those region town halls?
I was going to ask Hans Williams if he would give us an update on that.
Thank you.
Hans?
Yeah, could you ask that again? I'm sorry, I missed the specific question that you had.
Could you just share a little bit more around what the community should expect to receive over the next couple of weeks, and then also following the town hall?
Yes, thank you. I apologize. So right now we're getting ready for those August town halls. As Melissa said, those will be very focused on SPLOST and the facility condition improvements that we've done kind of up to this point. And then
La reunión de distrito.
well, there'll also be an update on the timeline of the CMP and kind of what to expect moving forward. We still have an expectation of being able to present this to the board in November. There is another round of public meetings that we expect to be announcing soon. Right now we're solidifying the timeline of exactly when those will happen, but it will be towards the end of September. That's when we'll be really diving into options for the CMP, what possibilities might come out of the CMP and what to expect. So these August meetings are really more of an update and a focus on facility improvements and the existing programs like SPLOST. What have we done? What are we doing? And what to expect with facilities in the immediate future. And then that second set of meetings, at least for this fall, in September, will really be diving into the options of the CMP.
Thank you. And we have a lot to cover, so I don't want to spend, I'm thinking we have an hour. We're already at 6:22. I don't want to spend too much on this, but maybe just to get a little bit into SPLOST 5 and what will be reported on that. And just so everyone understands, there is a monthly status report that you can view on the DeKalb County School District website, and it is produced by AECOM, and it will let you know what is going on with the various projects and give you a little bit more details if you really want to get into the details. But Mr. Williams, do you mind chiming in a little bit more about what we can expect with SPLOST 5 reporting?
Sure. SPLOST 5, at this point, there are many projects in SPLOST 5 around what we call facility condition improvements. That's new roofs, HVAC systems, various renovations like that. And especially with the timing of SPLOST 5, back in 2015, when planning for SPLOST 5 started, there was a vision for what that would be. There were a lot of big projects. And over time, things have happened. What SPLOST 5 has changed. And so we want to make sure that the public understands what are these projects now, what to expect at your facility, what is it that the board has passed, and then when are all of these projects going to be completed? SPLOST 5, as I said, planning began 6 years ago. And so we want to make sure that people understand that the public understands how these projects are going to be completed, when they're going to be completed, and then also how that's going to transition hopefully into a new facility condition program, new facilities, new improvements through SPLOST 6 or any other funding that we have.
Thank you. And, you know, one of the concerns in a community that has overcrowding, like District 1 is, do we have to wait until the comprehensive master plan kicks in, work is started in order for us to get relief in District 1? And there's overcrowding in other areas as well. So how do we do both of those things at the same time?
I think one thing that's important to recognize is the comprehensive master plan is really more of a focusing tool. While it will inform future funding sources like SPLOST 6, it'll also help for any existing funding sources, making sure that the efforts of the district as relates to facilities are all kind of focused in the same direction, that we don't end up trying one thing here and then a few years from now say, oh wait, we were going to do something else, and then a few years later do something else. That there is a comprehensive master plan for the facilities for the district. So the short answer is yes, we want to make sure that that we wait for the comprehensive master plan to know what direction we're heading in, but we also know that there are things that are needed as soon as possible. That's one of the main reasons why we don't want to delay with finishing up this comprehensive master plan, getting it in front of the board. That's why we tried to maintain putting the timeline of being finished in November. So that way, as soon as possible, we can use all existing funding sources, everything we have, not just waiting until future funding with SPLOST 6 to say, what can we accomplish as soon as possible? Is there redistricting that we know will be in alignment with our future facilities plan? Is there future facilities that maybe we could find funding for in other ways? Is there other improvements that may not improve overcrowding, but will improve the condition of the existing schools to make it make it easier for the students that are in those buildings right now?
One of the reasons this is important to me as a board member is, you know, I started off talking about what the board does. And there's 11 duties and powers that the board has. And one of them, number 11, is to work with the superintendent to make sure we have adequate facilities to educate all students. So when I see schools that have overcrowding that's existed for many, many years, it concerns me. And I'm glad to hear that we are working on those things. One of the questions that comes up often, and I actually mentioned this at the board meeting last night, is when you look at, and this is the AECOM report right here, and you can see that as of June 30th, only 31% of expenditures had been used. And this is something that everyone can find online. So it's hard for people to understand why we only use 30% of funds, but yet we're going to reach out in a couple of months for more money. So that's something that I would like for people to understand. If someone wants to address that, I would appreciate it, because it's an issue that comes up regularly. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that and have some good conversation about it.
So I looked at the numbers today in the latest MSR, and I talked with AECOM about that. And we have, if you look now, and it's page 7 of the current report, there's a project budgets total by phase, and it does show that our current commitments, which are the invoices that we've had come in that aren't necessarily been paid yet, which is what current expenditures are. Of course, those have gone up as well, but our current commitments, we're at 37.8% spent of that $561 million. But a couple of things that I want to point out on that chart, and this is table 5. We have right now in design procurement, so we're soliciting for our architects. We have $84 million worth of projects that are in design procurement. We have $75 million worth of projects that are in design, and we have $18 million worth of projects that are in design or that are in construction procurement. So while we've only spent 37.8%, or not spent, but while we've only encumbered 37.8%, we do have about 28% of those projects that are currently either in design procurement or design, and then a total of 32% that are in either design procurement, design or construction procurement. So we say all that to say that we have projects that are in design now. Of course, design does not represent a large amount of the 561 million. The bulk of the expenditures will be in construction. So when those projects are actually under construction and completed. And we actually have, right now we have 20 projects that will be completing at the end of next summer, summer 2022, and then another 16 projects that will be completing at the end of 2023. So while, yes, we only have 37.8% that are encumbered right now, we do have a large percentage of projects that are in design or beginning to start design and will be coming at the end of next summer and the following summer.
And you bring up a good point, Mr. Boyd, where some people think, okay, SPLOST 5 has to be completed before SPLOST 6 can actually start. And that's not the case. They can actually be working at the same time.
Yes.
What kind of assurances can the community have that the accounting for all of this is being taken care of accurately? Because, you know, going back to February 2020, there had to be a reset because of various issues. I'm not going to even try to quote what Superintendent Tyson said at the time, but what we don't want is we don't want the community to think they're getting things and then it not happen. And that's a little bit of a sore spot, but I'm here to acknowledge the elephant in the middle of the living room so that we can operate with transparency and sensitivity. So what are your thoughts on that, Mr. Boyd, or anyone else?
One thing that we are doing is, and we actually talked about it with AECOM today on 7 projects. When we start the, at the very beginning of these projects, the architects do a preliminary report. They look at the scope, they tell us, and that's the scope that we have originally identified that the project needs to be, and that would have been something that was developed at the beginning of SPLOST 5. Some of these projects that we looked at today were major HVAC renovation projects. So we take their report and the architect goes through and looks at the building and says, and this was actually the issue on one of the projects. One of the projects was a sprinkler project. And they said, well, that building already has sprinklers. This one doesn't. So we need to look at that. But if they come in and say, so we're going to be tearing out the ceiling to replace all of the HVAC equipment, and it's going to cost this amount. But while we're doing it, if we wanted to deliver a complete project, we ought to also consider providing or changing out the lights from the old fluorescent lights to the new LED lights. So we looked at that and they have given us, the architect has given us an estimate, and we make decisions on a case-by-case basis whether we should add that to the project scope, add that as an alternate to the project scope, just so we can see exactly what it is we're going to be providing, getting more accurate numbers, more up-to-date numbers that the architects are giving us that are based on real-time costs instead of costs from 2015, 2016, when some of these budgets were originally started. So, you know, there is work like that that we're actually looking in, or that we're doing. Now, I will say this is a very volatile time right now. There are a lot of cost increases. There are also a lot of very lengthy delivery times on material and raw materials and products. So, you know, we do the best we can right now to estimate accurately what construction costs will be, but it's hard to get that crystal ball just right for next summer or even for summer 2023 on some of these projects.
Well, certainly, and I think that people in general, as long as they know what to expect and there's a proper expectation set, then it's a lot easier to digest and surprises. And that brings me to, because we could talk about this all day long, but that brings me to a specific project, which is one of the reasons of doing the town hall, was the Dunwoody-Chamblee Elementary School and the date change. So could we talk a little bit about that project in particular and the history of the date change and what happened and where we are now?
Okay, yes. So there were a couple of things that happened. That project, it was approved by the board in February of 2020. The plan at the time was that we would, later in that spring, we would have a site selected, and we would take that to the board, and have approval of the site in the spring, then the architect could start on the design. As we all know, well, one thing we might not all know was there was a transition then in leadership, one of our transitions between our COOs. So that was one thing that happened pretty much simultaneously with, or if not just right after or before the start of the pandemic. And that occurred in mid-March. There was a lot of, I would say, some lost time in there, and we did not get to take the site selection to the board until later. I think it was November of 2020. So that was a major part of the delay, getting the architect started on the site design. But then along the way, there have been some smaller delays also with getting site approval from the state and getting other approvals that we needed, for the design also. And that has pushed us so far that it just made that July 2022 date practically impossible because it was pushing us out so far. And what we're looking at right now is the July 23 date. I'm sorry, July 2023 date.
And if these kind of things happen in the future, is this something that the community can be made aware of? And, I think I kind of relate to how other people feel, short of me sifting through 1 million pages of data and report looking for major changes. It's really hard to follow. So could you give us some advice about how we can track these things better? Or is there a way that people could be made aware of material changes in the future?
Yeah, something especially as large as, or as long as a year delay, I think that is something that can be handled better in the future, that we can put out to the superintendent, to the board, and to our communications department. Now, what we typically do, we do have a construction advisory committee on all of our larger projects, and we typically will make them aware, and they are really what the construction advisory committee is the liaison between the project and the community. So we let them know, and then they would put that out to the community as well. In this instance, our first meeting was, I think it was July 6th, and that is a little bit later than we normally would in a project. This being a new school, we had to, this being a new school, we had to pull members for the CAC from various other schools, and then I think we might have even had a delay in our first meeting on that as well. But that's when they were, the CAC found out was in July, and I think that's when really the first time the community was made aware of it. But yeah, I would say we could definitely do a better job in notifying the community of delays, especially something as lengthy as a year delay.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that would be helpful. And, you're right. The construction advisory committee didn't even meet until July. So it was sort of the perfect storm for the information to fall in the cracks. If a community member wants to receive updates from the construction advisory committee, the CAC, is that an email they can sign up for? How do people follow those types of things?
They can get in touch with the, so this CAC is.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Not to be interrupted, but my mom was just asking if you have anyone that can translate her in Spanish.
Melissa, did you get?
We have translators, just give us 1 second.
Yes, if you go down to, young man, if you go down to the bottom of the screen where it says interpretation and click on that, you can click on Spanish, and then that's how you get the Spanish translation.
Okay, we're all the way down, right?
Yes, sir.
If I can, Ms. Harris, repeat that in
Okay.
Spanish.
Please do.
Thank you.
Hola, buenas noches. Gracias por acompañarnos. Para todas esas personas que quieren escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor presionen la opción de interpretación, que es como un globo que encuentran en la parte baja de la pantalla, y seleccionen español. I'm sorry for the interruption.
I love that entire families are joining in together. I think that's great. And that's what this is all about. And as we do more of these, this will give more people opportunity to join in, listen to the recordings, follow up with questions. And to that point, we were just talking about the CAC, the Construction Advisory Committee. If a community member wants to follow what's going on, do they have monthly meetings? Are there minutes? How can someone stay informed without fishing all over the website for information?
So they have regular meetings, and the CAC is a subset of or subcommittee of the schools principal advisory committee. So they could get in touch with the Dunwoody Elementary Schools Principal Advisory Committee or the principal there, and they can put them in touch with the appropriate CAC chairperson so that they can put questions into them.
Okay, so you're saying community members can even ask questions as well if they wanted to know what's going on with
Right,
something.
exactly. They can. So what the CAC is really a liaison between, like I said, between the project and the community. So if they do have questions, they can get in touch with the principal or the PAC or the CAC chair, and they can send them the questions, and then the principal send the questions to us, and we can respond and send back. And then we do attend meetings at the, usually they're about quarterly, but we do plan to have meetings with the various CACs. And this isn't just for the Dunwoody Chamblee, this would be for any of our large, when we have another, say, large addition project or a new school project, we'll have these CACs. And the community can ask questions that way. They go through the principal to me or somebody on my staff, and then we'll respond and get back in touch with the CAC.
That's helpful to know that people can kind of self-serve. And I know as board member, I do a little bit of that myself. The PAC, the Principals Advisory Committee, all of the schools post those meetings. I believe the requirement is quarterly. Ms. Watson-Harris, you know the requirements better than I do. Some actually meet more often. And I read those for all of the schools in District 1 and also other districts as well. It's a great way to kind of have a snapshot of what's going on. If I know, even as when my son was a parent and he graduated in 2019, but he was a graduate of Chamblee High School, but I often like to know what was going on in the other high schools. And so those reports are really helpful. And I know as a parent, sometimes it was frustrating for me because I didn't know what was going on and I didn't know where to find the information. So I encourage everyone, be sure that you go to your local school website and you can just bookmark those, the PAC pages, and they do update those regularly, and they're really helpful. You can see the agenda ahead of time. You can see the discussion afterwards. So that's a great resource. The Construction Advisory Committee reports are helpful. We've talked about the Comprehensive Master Plan and what's going on with that. One thing I wanted to make sure I'm keeping an eye on time.
Yeah. Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Sorry, if you don't mind, I just wanted to acknowledge that I think there are like 69 questions in the chat, and I just wanted to make a commitment that the team is going to download that afterwards. So we will respond to all of the questions, both in English and Spanish, after the meeting.
Excellent. And I have questions as well, and I already know we're not going to get to them. And the questions that I have, these aren't my questions, these are community questions. For those of you who have posted on my Facebook page or sent me emails, I will also forward those. So we'll have a pile of questions that everyone can address. So thank you for mentioning that. There's no way to cover everything in an hour. So I'm watching the chat also, and I'm trying to cherry pick questions, and I kind of had 3 topics and 20 minutes for each. So I just want to shift now to, comprehensive master plan is everything. A specific project we discussed was the Dunwoody Chamblee Elementary School, which is related to overcrowding. And that sort of drifts into the third topic, which is the issue of comparability and overcrowding in general. And some people may or may not know about the comparability issue. Could someone sort of give a summary of that and explain how it impacted the school district? And one of the reasons I'm asking is I get a lot of people saying, I'm bracing myself for this to happen again. And so I thought I would just toss that off to whoever wants to address the issue.
Mrs. Pierce, could you start? And then I know that our Chief Academic Officer is also on, Ms. Stepney, who'll be able to support with an answer there.
Sure, and I know Stacy will have a much more detailed answer than I will. But basically, it just really addresses the equity, and I'm really trying to make sure I don't say anything incorrect. So Stacy, chime in and interrupt at any time. But making sure that schools are staffed appropriately and as enrollment. So as we look at enrollments, we may have to adjust staffing. And this is the part that Stacy, you might want to chime in and correct me, between Title I and non-Title I schools. So making sure that the schools have equitable resources and staffing to serve the students. Ms. Stepney, you here yet?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Hill, for the opportunity. I would like to explain comparability in terminology that we all can understand. The Georgia Department of Education made a commitment to make sure that we're providing equitable services in our Title I and our non-Title I schools. So they have come up with a formula that we must use to determine the district's comparability. And it is defined based on student enrollment. Student enrollment encompasses our students in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. So we take out our pre-K students and our 3-year-olds. We take them out of the formula. And once we do that, we look at the student-teacher ratio in Title I schools as well as non-Title I schools. And so in the formula, they make an adjustment and they will give us the percentage, the average, that we have to make sure that we are within that average. If we're not within that average at our Title I schools, then we have to provide additional staffing. And so I would like to use, just as an example, if you have a non-Title I school that is staffed and the school is over, because we provide funding in I'm going to use a term, allocations or points. That's how we shop and get our teachers. And so we plan ahead and we give what we call a forecasted allotment, meaning Dunwoody High School has a forecasted allotment. We anticipated so many students, and so we give them their allocations to hire teachers. If those students do not show up, if they do not enroll, then we as a district have to look and examine, okay, where are the students, try to find them. If we cannot find them, we cannot leave this school overstaffed where there's another school that's understaffed. And so we as a district learned some valuable lessons last time. We cannot wait. We must be very aggressive in our approach. Our superintendent has been very, very direct with us to say, what were our lessons learned last time? Let's have an action plan, because we have to be committed to our stakeholders to share and be transparent, throughout this process, so it's not a surprise. And so we are working to do that. We are monitoring every single day our actual enrollment. We have a midday check, we have a PM check where we're monitoring who is actually coming to school. And our principals right now, many of them are on the call, and we publicly say thank you, because they are embracing this with us by calling families and asking, what can we do to help you with registration? Please come back, or whatever, addressing those issues, so that at the appropriate time, we can look and say, this is where we are, and then begin to make those adjustments. So it's not a knee jerk or feeling as if, oh my goodness, I've been at this school and now I have to move. So hopefully that answered it, Mrs. Hill. I can certainly provide more.
I might want to add a couple more points to that, Stacy, in that in addition to the what you've already described is, number one, charter schools are included in this comparability assessment. So we look at their staffing patterns as well as our own staffing patterns. And then second, the timeline, the state's official program, even though we're monitoring enrollment currently, and usually it's the 10th day is when enrollment starts settling down. The state looks at our October staffing report, and then it's based on that report that we need to do the official assessment of our status, and that the annual deadline for achieving what we call achieving comparability is typically December. Last year there was an extension due to the kind of the extraordinary impact that the pandemic had on enrollments, and they extended that deadline out to February. But our goal is to have a very good understanding of our status much earlier than October, so that if changes are needed, they are not made late in the semester, and that we bring ourselves into compliance well before the December deadline.
So what I'm hearing you say is in October, there's enrollment data, and then by December, plans will be made to address any issues that need to be addressed. And is that correct? I know this is really complicated, but I just want to make sure I understand.
Not quite. December is the deadline.
Okay.
Based on our experiences, that we want to bring ourselves into compliance well before the deadline, and even before the October date. So that's why we're monitoring the data so closely, even in these first few days of coming back to school. We are working on this very carefully, because we do not want to press this up against the deadline, because we know the later in the school year we have to make changes. If we need to make changes, the more difficult it is on the students, and the goal is not to make this difficult on students. So we're going to be working closely. We're trying to schedule meetings with the state to make sure we understand how this year is going to work, to see if there's going to be any changes. Also to try and make sure that the playing field is as level as possible, and make this as hopefully as good as we can. Given that, you might also have mentioned, I don't think Stacy's particularly mentioned this, but this test, that this comparability situation is really a prerequisite for receiving federal funds. That's its connection to Title I, is that if you're not in compliance, you basically cannot receive federal funds. So this is a very important situation that we manage to for the district, because we have students that need federal funding, and we want to maintain that.
And just so by asking this question, I haven't inadvertently alarmed people. How will the community and teachers and schools be made aware of any changes that may be happening? I know, Mr. Burbridge, you can't guarantee there will be no changes, but we also don't want surprises. So what kind of expectation can you set around this complicated topic of comparability, so people are, realistically know what is or isn't coming?
Well, I think the one nice thing about this is that enrollment is not a secret, and principals know whether or not they are meeting their staffing kind of model that their staffing was predicated on. So I expect people, the issue last year was that many students that we staffed the schools in a certain manner, and many of the students didn't show up at those schools. So number one, parents, if your kids are eligible to go to school, make sure they're enrolled and they end up at school. Kids should be in school as number one. And then principals will be in many ways, principals are the first to know whether or not this is going to be an issue at their school, because they see the difference in what they're staffed for and what's and the number of students that actually showed up. So nobody should be surprised by this. This is an annual event. Principals see the enrollment data. They know what their schools were staffed for, and so they are upfront and should know. And this should not be a surprise to anybody if a change is required.
So are you saying if there is a change coming, it's something the principals will be informing the community about?
I think we learned a lesson to be much, this is to inform the principals, to keep them informed every step of the way as we do the comparability tests and perform that. And as the numbers start coming in, as we start reporting to the state, then the principals will be made aware as early in the process as we could possibly inform them.
And this may not be a question that you know the answer to, but I've received emails from city council members and also mayors in my district asking about enrollment. How is it looking? if people want to know enrollment, is that something that the district will publish, or should they be redirected to the principal of the school they're interested in? What do you suggest? And again, Mr. Burbridge, this may not be a question for you.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Ms. Hill, I'm going to toss that to Ms. Stepney.
Thank you.
That can speak to a little bit more about enrollment and the reporting of that. Thanks.
Thank you, Superintendent Watson-Harris. With our actual attendance enrollment, the best measure right now is at the local school level, Mrs. Hill, and to all of our stakeholders. And the reason I'm referring you back to the local school is because right now we have families that are enrolling by the minute. And so as they enroll, our systems are not readily updated until after everything refreshes. And so the local school principal knows I have 5 folders that I'm putting in. I'll see that later, but the principal knows exactly how many are enrolled. There will be a time, hopefully after these 10 days, once enrollment settles, then we'll be able to say, this is where you can get the enrollment numbers. We have been transparent and on the planning webpage. Hans Williams has the awesome responsibility of updating that. You'll see our actual October counts where we share the enrollment. So we will share that information, but during the scrubbing time, this is where we are making sure that we have every child accounted for. Also, we have our virtual students who we are working with right now. And so as families are making their decisions with new enrollees, that number could fluctuate going to virtual versus in person, but we are accounting for all of them.
Okay, so it sounds like, again, this is an issue of sort of air traffic control, people needing to know where to get the information. And speaking of, we have 5 minutes left, and I know we had 3 main topics, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, you know, the overall environment that we're in right now. So could you guys maybe discuss how parents and community members and students themselves could get information about what the rules are around COVID and masking and how decisions are being made? I think that's a nice way to wrap up because it's obviously top of mind for everyone. And again, Ms. Watson-Harris said there are questions, no way to cover everything. I have more questions people sent me that I'll be forwarding. There's questions in the chat, but maybe we could just wrap up talking about, you know, COVID and precautions and all of the rules around that. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'd like to introduce another member of the team, Dr. Moore Sanders, who can begin to address just kind of where you can find information about our response to the pandemic and the safety measures that we're taking in the schools, and can also start to talk a little bit about our medical advisory committee and just the way that we're making decisions. Dr. Moore Sanders.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you, Ms. Watson-Harris, and good evening, everyone. For our parents, what we are doing now is looking at we've looked at our masking protocols. And as everyone knows, we moved to requiring masks for everyone in our district, including individuals that are vaccinated. And we did that out of an abundance of caution to ensure that we keep everyone safe. And because this Delta variant is rapidly increasing among both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. We do have a presence on our website, and I will share that we are updating our guidance around how we present information regarding quarantine and what parents should do if they have cases and they need to isolate at the home level. What I will share with you is that I know that many individuals have been concerned, and one of the things that we have done is make sure that we stay in touch with the guidance that comes down from the CDC, as well as our Department of Public Health. And there has been some changes, more changes recently. As you all know, when we first did our masking protocol, we were strongly recommended. And we moved out of an abundance of caution. It took, the CDC has finally moved in that direction as well. And now they are also recommending that everyone remain masked in a school building. What I will share, Mrs. Hill, you asked a question earlier, and I remember asking a parent wanted to know about masks and if there are certain types of masks that children should wear or not wear. One of the things that we look at is masking is to cover mainly the mouth and the nose. And so what we have been telling parents to make sure that their babies put something on that can be comfortable If they're wearing the mask and they can vent it of just a little bit at the top, then that gives the children a little bit more room to actually breathe. The recommendation is not to wear just a face shield. That is not the recommendation of the CDC, nor is that the recommendation of the American Academy of Pediatrics. So if a child does wear a face shield, and there are some that may choose to do so, the recommendation is still to wear a mask that covers the mouth and the nose if they want to wear that underneath a face shield. We have made some concessions because we do know that it is difficult for everyone to wear a mask all day long. So we are encouraging our schools to take mask breaks for individuals to go outside as much as possible. Because when you're out in an open space, you don't have to mask as much. But what we're doing now is indoor spaces. The recommendation is for everyone to wear a mask. We are updating our guidance as we speak to make sure that it is most current on our website, but that would be the place that we would send our parents to get the guidance around our COVID-19 protocols.
I appreciate that. And just so everyone knows, in the chat, there was a link posted to where you can get information on the website. You can go on the DeKalb School website. There's a COVID-19 health and safety section, and reach out to your school principal, teacher, regional superintendent, anyone to get directions to that section of the website so that you have kind of the main source of information, and then follow up. We are now at 7 o'clock, and obviously we couldn't cover everything. I want to be respectful of people's time and wrap up. Again, questions from the chat will be sent to someone who will be answering. The questions I've received, I'll be doing the same. And Ms. Watson-Harris, I'm going to pass the baton to you so that you can wrap us up. But thank you everyone for joining live. Thank you for those listening to the recording, and thank you to the team for being part of this conversation tonight. And we'll do more of these.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Hill, and it's an honor and a privilege for the team to support these types of community engagement sessions. And again, we will take all of the questions and suggestions. I've been following the chat throughout the evening, and we will provide responses. And as I shared before, we will show up where we're invited. So if there are additional opportunities to engage with the District 1 community, we will welcome those opportunities. And we look forward to having a very successful year for our scholars. And again, we just thank you for the opportunity to be in community this evening. Thank you.